Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group. So this is the community call where we talk about all the non-SharePoint Framework and non-JavaScript development stuff. Well, we partly actually go to that topic today as well. So more on the solution design architectures, see some NuGet packages and all of that. Today we'll talk about actually SharePoint Framework because SharePoint Framework is big part of the SharePoint 2019 release, and that's part of the agenda as well. But before we go there, let's quickly do a few intro slides if there are new people joining the call and you haven't been actually on these calls before. So we started originally SharePoint Patterns and Practices monthly community calls, so SharePoint Developer monthly community calls, already back in 2014. And then gradually it's been growing and growing, and quite fast at some point we realized that, well, we're running out of time. There was cool demos, there was a lot of stuff to cover. So we actually introduced first an office hours, and then we introduced two different special interest group calls. One is the SharePoint Framework special interest group, where we talk about more the SharePoint Framework specific topics, and hopefully there's always a active discussion in the window, and we can talk about those questions which we can have. And the second one is the General Dev special interest group. This was originally, I think, PMP some core SIG or PMP office hours, this one, but then we kind of formatted that to be part of the general SharePoint Dev. So anything on-prem, flow, provisioning, automation, all of that falls on this. Anything on a SharePoint Framework falls on the other one. And then we also have the monthly community calls. So the next one for that one is coming actually on next Tuesday, where we can talk about engineering, user voice status. We talk about more what has happened within the past month and kind of an end-to-end picture what's happening in the SharePoint engineering and community side. By the way, next Tuesday we'll actually have two call demos. I will announce the agenda later today. There's the Sean Squires is going to join us again to do the latest on site designs and site scripts in next Tuesday, and then I'm going to do a live demo on the SharePoint Framework 1.6, which is scheduled to go live later this month. So, but I'm going to actually demonstrate some of the capabilities in 1.6 now already on next Tuesday. But that's on next Tuesday. Today, I think we still have, SharePoint has such a humongous amount of stuff happening also on the dev side, and that's actually why we have quite a few calls. So you can always have a pinpoint and see our recordings in YouTube. You can jump to the specific demo what you're looking. Before we actually go to the agenda of today, there are opportunities to participate in a community. Obviously, being part of these calls, having a discussion in iWindow, that's absolutely one way of participating. We understand that people are busy. Actually, they have their own life, and you can't always just participate on every single call, but you can demo a solution or technical pattern. So if you want to have more visibility for your role, if you want to grow to be an MVP, or if you are an MVP as an example, and you want to gain visibility points, these calls are actually great opportunity for you.
Is Vesa back? I think I hear Vesa
Yes,
breathing.
I'm back. I'm here. This is unbelievable. It is what it is. So okay, cool.
I was just telling people that someone has taken the TCP joke very seriously.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Cool. Now, so on today's agenda, so there's only a few slides, general announcement. We're not going to have a discussion on the roadmap or anything like that today, so we'll talk about that one on next Tuesdays. There are some adjustments on the 1.6 release as an example. Not major delays or anything like that, but some adjustments. But we want to make sure that we have plenty of time for demos, because we promised to go through the modern page approvals flow with Jax. Jax, I do apologize. I just used your short name because your name is so long that it actually breaks the slide. So, but I think everybody knows you as a Jax. So,
yes.
And then I'm going to do an end-to-end kind of a clarification. What is the SharePoint 2019 developer platform? So what's supported, what's not supported. We're going to talk about SharePoint Framework development in SharePoint 2019. Let's crossing fingers that the Skype issue, which we had already, is the only one today. But and then Q&A hopefully in the end. And all the time you can actually ask questions. We'll try to follow up on the ION window. Few reminders, obviously, documentation, AKMS SP DevDocs is the SharePoint documentation. Jax has been working on moving some of the Flow and Power Apps documentation here as well. We will sync with Jax on latest on that one. That's going to happen at some point, right, Jax?
Yes. My target is, given that all the projects probably by Ignite, we will have the first set of docs going live.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. So the whole point being on the fact that anything once is related on SharePoint development or makers, meaning the configuration like flow and Power Apps, will be found from one single location. We're hitting like 900,000 views in a month already in here, so that's a good achievement. The second thing what I wanted to still promote, and now I do apologize, we're falling behind on this one because I was on vacation. Apparently, not that many of my colleagues were actually following up on what's happening here. So the issue list is super important way for us to get the reports from you if you run into any API issues, if you run into issues in SharePoint Online. And this is mainly because our general support does not actually support development topics. So if you call the SharePoint support, online support saying, hey, this API doesn't seem to work, they're not going to actually help you because it's a customization thing or development thing. And that's why we have opened up this issue list, and we're trying to keep up with incoming input in here. We are struggling, so we do apologize on the delays of getting up to date on everything, but we'll actually have again a triage later today on the submitted things. Now, you're missing a ribbon in your 365 tenant. Whoa, that's interesting. No idea what that is, but missing a ribbon in a tenant is not a dev topic. So that's because that's not a dev topic. Please open up a support issue using the admin portal in your tenant and explain them what's the issue, and they will help you. Now, okay, and SharePoint Starter Kit, just a reminder on this one, AKMS SP Dev Starter Kit, there has been some advantages or additional improvements on the docs during the summertime. We're now currently working on end-to-end automation of this one, so pretty soon you can go, well, at least by the Ignite timeframe, intention is that you can go to our website, you can sign in as a tenant administrator, and you can select what kind of content packs you actually want to provision to your tenant. One of them being the portal, which you're seeing here. There will be other ones as well. And all of the content packs will be open sourced, so people are able to contribute on this as well. The main intention of that self-service portal or web application is that you can actually use that as, for example, as a pre-sales tool. If you're a consultant, you have a customer pre-sales engagement tomorrow, you can actually easily use that tool to provision a site with the colors and theme files and everything else matching the customer. So you can easily actually have an example demo available. Now, there's a good question from Ali Rope around one of these will be available in SharePoint 2019. We're looking into that option for SharePoint Starter Kit and the communication side. There are certain challenges of introducing the Starter Kit as such in on-premises or SharePoint 2019 because it actually contains capabilities and Microsoft Graph dependencies and all of that. So we will have to refactor the Starter Kit at some point to have a separate solutions for SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-Prem to make that happen. And that will still take some time. Good. That's it from my side. As a quick intro, I'll be back on the SharePoint 2019 demos, but Jax, your turn. Just take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Vesa. So first things first, we are doing this regularly in the development bi-weekly calls talking about Flow and Power Apps and all the awesome solutions that you all build with the platform. So if you are interested to talk about the solutions that you're building, make sure you reach out to me or Vesa, and we can have you demo in these calls. Today, I'm going to be showing the page approvals, which we just released to targeted release tenants. I think that just completed 100% this week. So if you have a targeted release tenant, you should be able to use this feature. So I'm going to basically share my desktop.
And sharing. Come on, start. And it's starting, loading 3 dots, looks promising.
Excellent.
And I got your screen.
Okay, so page approvals is not new to SharePoint. If you have used a classic publishing model, I think you're all familiar with the approvals. You can set up a content approval on a pages library, and then route pages to approval before it being published. So now we know that that's one of the biggest features that customer requests that we got when we introduced communication sites, especially because communication sites are mostly used for letting organizations and others know about all the things that are happening in the company. And sometimes you need to kind of have some approvals, so you have someone verifying and reviewing the content that is being published. So the Modern Pages library exactly facilitates that, modern approvals, sorry, but with the help of a very powerful platform called Microsoft Flow. So in the Pages library, if you go to the Flow menu, you will see Configure Page Approval. And that basically is going to set you up with a flow and other things that are required for this library to function. So if I hit Create Flow now, I'm going to get the Create Flow action here, the panel, where I would be able to create the page approval flow in SharePoint without needing to go to the flow site. So here I get a flow name. I can add my approvers. So I'm going to add myself. And here, one of the things to basically look for is this is not filtering who are the owners or who are the site visitors or members. Right now, the site owner who's configuring this, who has to give the approvers and make sure that they have access to the page when they do come to review and approve the page. So let's go through the flow, and then probably we can go through some of the details. So now if I click create, that's going to create the approval flow, change all the settings in my library, and in a moment you will see that it will create the flow, give you a message, and you will see some extra columns coming up in the library, which is the approval status. So this will now guard whether a page is in draft, pending, or approved state. So now what happens is on this left side of the Edge, Microsoft Edge browser, I have another user signed into the site. And I'm just going to create a page. Let's say, hello, SharePoint PNP. And then now you can see instead of publish, I have submit for approval. So I can always save as draft, continue doing this as long as I'm okay with my content. But once I'm done with the content, then instead of publish, I see submit for approval. So now as soon as I do the submit for approval, it's going to bring up a flow panel, which is basically the flow run panel. And it's going to ask me, you're submitting this for approval, just verifying your connections. And now whether any message that you want to follow up with this approval. So I'll say maybe my page to be approved. Vesa is awesome. Please approve. And now I can submit this page. So now what happens is the page is submitted for approval. And in a second, you should see this page now status changing to review approvals. There it goes. So it's pending approval now. So this, what happens so far is the admin on the site enabled approvals for pages. We created a flow. And in the flow, I also set myself as an approver so that all the pages that do come for approval get routed to me. And then a user who went to the site added a page. He basically submitted the page for approval instead of directly publishing the page, and now he basically has pending approval. Now if I go to my email, I have an email from Flow saying that there is an approval waiting for me, requested by John Doe, who's this user on the left, and then message sent with the request, Vesa is awesome, please approve this page. Well, I could approve here directly and say, yes, everything looks good, but I can also click to review the page. And this is something what we call actionable message. Actionable messages are supported in the latest Outlook clients. So if you have Office 365 Outlook and using the latest Outlook client as well, whether it's web access or your Windows Outlook client, you get actionable messages. If you're using Mac Outlook client or Windows Outlook client or any other client that's not Outlook, you don't get the actionable message support. So at those times, you will see this message at the bottom. Basically, you have the link to review the page as well. And then if you click that link, that's going to open the page in SharePoint. And now if I do click, so I have the action here, review approvals. Now, since I am an approver on this page, now when you click review approvals, it'll know that I have an approval waiting for me for this particular page, and I will get the approval panel here from Flow. So it has all the details, and then I can basically do advanced. I can even reassign to different person if I am, in vacation or I have some other work, and then I can now click approve. I can basically add some comments and then confirm. So now that basically approves the page, and soon you should get, so soon John should get an email basically saying that the page is approved. Now, there are some quirks here. You see that this is not changing, but if I actually refresh the page, it will change. This is some of the regressions that we just caught after releasing. So, we just knew that there was some bug that was stopping that auto refresh here. So let's wait and see if John gets an email. Oh, there you go. So here it is. So now John gets an email saying your SharePoint page was approved, and you can basically see that, approved by Chakradeep with the following comment, look good. And then view page, you can basically click the page and view the page for John. So this is what the end-to-end flow is for page approvals. And what happens behind the scenes is when the admin created the flow, if you actually go to from the library, for folks that want to know how to quickly go to see your flows, if you click flows, see your flows, you will go to the flow site, and here you will see your flow, the submit SharePoint page for approval. Now this name depends on the name that you gave when creating the flow. So now if you edit or if you just click that flow, you can see the run history. It was succeeded 3 minutes ago, right? And if you click edit flow, you can actually see what we're doing, and you have full control over this flow now to add or modify or do anything that you want based off of your organization policies, right? This is the basic template that we believe works, and then you can now continue doing the things that you want to do with this template. For example, start an approval right now uses anyone from assigned list. You can change that to everyone from the assigned list if you have 3 or 4 approvals that needs to go through and finish all the review for everybody one by one. You can, so the basic flow, if you go through this, the design of this flow is basically, it runs for the pages library, and then it has a message. That's what you saw, the people entering a message. You can remove that, then you won't get the ability for people to submit a message. Then we get the file properties, which basically gives me some data about what the page is. And then I get the metadata to get all of the other required metadata I have on that. I set the content approval status for the library to be pending. So that way now SharePoint knows that the page is now moved from draft to pending. And of course the E tag is a very important thing. E tag refers to the particular version of the page that is being requested to review. So then I start an approval. So everything is set. I start an approval. In the condition, I check if the response of the approval is approved. If it is, I use the same content approval action, and I set it to approved with the comments that the approver supplied during when the approver hit approve button. Similarly, if it's rejected, I do the same thing. Instead of action being the approve here, I just make it reject. And then I send an email notification that basically saying that your page was approved or your page was rejected. And that's basically the flow. It's really simple, straightforward, and gives you the ability to keep using what you get from SharePoint, or you have the ability to just go and edit the page, edit the flow and add your own governance in the flow. So one other thing that happened was if you go to your library settings and then versioning settings, you see you have now content approval enabled. So that's what the panel did as well when you created the flow. Now you could go and say no, then that basically means you don't have any approvals. Now, the other thing with the flow is that you have the option of running multiple flows on this pages library, right? It's just a flow. I mean, it's a library. You can create how much ever you want. So I can create a new flow again. I can basically name the approval flow to be different. I get that option in the panel once it comes up. So I can, maybe call it as news approval, for example. And I can put my name, create the flow. Can everyone see my screen? It's still working, right?
Yeah, it's working. Its update rate is pretty low. I've been seeing this slightly in Redmond. You guys are using too much bandwidth, so.
No one is supposed to be in the office at this time.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
So now I created two flows. Right. So now, if John Doe goes to the site, and let's go to home, and he's going to create a news post because news post is something different from a normal page, right? So now, when he wants to submit the content, he will now get two options. One is page approval and one is news approval. So these are the two flows that he has the option to submit. So this is a neat way, instead of complicating the existing flow, to check for whether it's a news or it's a page or it's type of page or whatever. You could create multiple flows and just manage them individually. So now you can, John knows that this is a news post. I'm supposed to get news approval. And you click news approval and you go through the same flow of basically going through the approval process. So you're not limited with how many approval flows that you can have. It basically supports all of those scenarios today. So this is page approvals. We have few issues as well. We released it for TRs. If you go to aka.ms/SharePoint-page-approvals.
Jax, I have to jump on this one and quickly say, it's been too long since you've been a consultant. They're not issues, they're challenges.
They're challenges, they are regression.
Challenges, not regression.
Yes, we can call it anything.
For improvements, right?
No, these are unfortunately our issues.
Okay.
I have to admit them that they are issues and known issues though. We know we fixed them, but something caused some regression and it didn't ship. So, but good news is that we all fixed it. It might be there next week or so. So those won't happen. So one of the things that won't work is if you set up your pages library. So for example, if I go into library settings and versioning settings, and I have this option of setting document version history. The default is create major and minor versions, which creates drafts, and then it kind of 1.1, 1.2, and then when you publish, it becomes 2. Then you have major versions. It only sticks with 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. So if you select create major versions, right now the flow, the system will fail. We know we fixed it before it caused a regression, so it'll probably be fixed next week or so in the service. So that's one known issue that I have here. The other one is basically the refresh that I was showing. If the page is approved, the page doesn't refresh automatically to say it's approved. So that also is a bug. We know that. We fixed it. The regression, it'll be there next week or so. The other one that we found out in the in the discussion post is that it's not working in UK if you create a new tenant today, new Flow and Power Apps tenancy. So I'm just scrolling down to that particular post.
And while you're doing that, just to quickly note that Kerem just joined and he's just hearing you to pinpoint issues. So Kerem, just making sure that you're aware, we did demo the stuff as well. So all good.
Yes, we're in sync. Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome, Kerem. And for folks that don't know, Kerem is, I work with Kerem, and Kerem is the PM responsible for bringing Flow and Power Apps to SharePoint. Working in this for the past 3 years, Karan.
Yes, thereabouts.
Yeah. So if you have any issues, send them to Karan. Don't send them to me.
That's why I'm here.
Yep. So we identified through this customer. Thanks for reporting this issue, Ben, if you're not in the call. And basically, there is some issues with creating a common database service, which is what the Flow and Power Apps use behind the scenes to power up their platform. So right now, they're investigating this, and Flow team will publish some documentation and workarounds on how to rectify this problem. But until then, page approvals won't work in UK if you create a new tenant. So this is going to be logged as a known issue, and basically will be resolved by the Flow team very soon. So that's something to keep in mind. If you already have a tenant in UK and you're already working there, no problem at all. It's just the new tenants that are being created. I think since March or something, you can see the thread where he has more information around that. So bad news is it doesn't work in UK, but good news is if you do keep us giving feedback, we are listening to the feedback. We are going through this tech community post. So if you use and give us some issue or some problem that you find, we will certainly look into it and make sure that things are working. So that's page approvals.
Now, Jax, two questions which partly were answered actually already in the community in the window, but I wanted to make sure that we actually get it recorded as well. So first of all, approvals for me. So is there a view where you can actually see the pending approvals? So if you are the manager who needs to approve plenty of submissions.
So good news is that, yes, we do have the option for folks to go and look at all of their approvals. So if you go to your Flow website, on the top there is approvals link. I'm just waiting in the Skype to see when it refreshes.
Yeah, the refresh rate is slightly sketchy, but...
No, it's very sketchy.
Yes, it is. Updating.
So there is an approvals link. So if you click that, you will see all of your approvals, so received, sent, and the history. Now this one corresponds to everything, right? It's not specific to that particular page or that particular SharePoint item. This is for everything. Yeah. So right now this is the option we have, but we have plans. Similarly, how you saw, we were able to create a Flow submit page for approval in the context of SharePoint and in the context of the page. We will work on bringing this approval setting and approval history in SharePoint in the context of the page. So you can see all of the history and everything basically in SharePoint without needing to go to Flow. So that's in the backlog. But it's a good question. If you want to see all of your approvals today, you have to go to Flow and then click on approvals.
Cool. The second question is that do these approval flows count against the standard flow run count for licensing perspectives? And it was answered already in the window that is true, because these are typical flows. It's a flow service. We just in SharePoint we associate flow directly to the page approvals, so that's understandable.
Yeah.
Now, and then the obvious one quickly is how about documents? So can we get similar kind of things for document approval?
So documentation, the document approvals, the only difference is you don't have a surface to submit the document or approve or reject the document in SharePoint. We never had that. But you can have a flow and basically, use the content approval action. And when somebody uploads a library, somebody uploads a document to a library, or you can have a manual flow that runs that you can go select the document and say submit for approval. In Pages, since we have actions like publish or submit and a surface where people edit and do things, we have data integration. In Word and PowerPoint, we don't have the option to publish, right? There's no concept. So basically, you have to do it in the library and then make it work with your content approval setting. but it's the same content approvals. It's not something new. So I actually have a flow here called document approval. Hopefully the screen refreshes straight to the designer.
It's like the internet from the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody said 128 bits. Isn't that ISDL? Yeah. So my first one was 2,400 pounds modem. And then
so here's the flow.
To 6K.
Yes.
Here's the flow I created on document approval. The scenario is really simple. Somebody works on a document in OneDrive or in their own library, and then they move the document for approvals to a different library, right? A very simple scenario you could see everywhere, people doing this. And when that happens, when somebody puts a document in that library, I set the content approval status of the document to submit, and basically it becomes a draft and pending. And then it basically uses the same e-tag concept that you saw on the pages. And then it starts an approval, right? And once the approval goes through and somebody says, yes, my document is approved after reviewing the document, it comes back and sets the same thing as we saw on the page approval, which is the action is approved, and if it's rejected, the action is rejected. So the thing that you would miss is something like the submit for approval or the review approval integration in the Word client. You have to do it from SharePoint.
Yeah. So the UI changes based on the status and all of that. Well, it changes the status of the field items or item fields of the document, but it's not as intuitive as for pages. So
yeah, I mean, you still have, since it's using, so if I go to that particular library, you still use content approvals. This is a basic thing that we use for managing the approval status in SharePoint, right? The content approvals have the approval status column that gets automatically added. It's pending, it's draft, it's approved. You get all of those stuff. So that's why we're not doing anything new. We're reusing the approval status column, which is tied with the content approval, and then use the content approval status flow action to perform those. Now, one thing, this is a heavy approval system, right? You can't do anything once it goes to pending. Site owners only can change the status. If you want a lightweight action, then you basically select the document. Imagine you don't have content approval settings here, it's turned off. And then if you click flow, you will get a new option.
You won't when we have the content approval on. You need to go to another library.
Yes, I thought we didn't fix that bug.
No, it's an opportunity for improvement.
Opportunity for improvement, yeah.
Now,
it's really easy to go back. You just go back to this, versioning settings and then turn off content approvals. And then you come back and select the document and then you click flow. And now it's not showing yet. This is why you should need to stick with your script for the demo.
Oh, you have scripts for your demos? I just can't wait.
Don't worry, because the screen refresh is so slow, we don't even recognize there's a problem.
Oh, there you go. After I refresh my page, and then your screen refreshes that, you will see I selected a document, and there is request sign-off.
Yeah.
So request sign-off is...
We recognize that request sign-off is a very lightweight feature. It's basically not a strict process feature. It's more of a, if end users wanted to easily set up an approval and then track that information in a column, this is a way for them to do that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't give you the structure, the set of approvals that content approvals do, but it is, I think, a good option for lightweight approval scenarios still.
Yeah. So you have options there. Depending on the scenario, you could choose either or.
And I think what you said, one thing to really kind of understand, that if you are, let's say, experienced SharePoint guy, you've been working with SharePoint since 2007 or 2010 or whatever, the flow is just piggybacking on the out-of-the-box approval, the fields and functionalities, everything else. So technically, it's just automating those updates to the fields and approvals of the item. The the actual approval of the item is exactly the same, which has been there since 2010 or something like that, or pretty much the same. So
yeah.
Cool. I'm going to actually flip back on the slides because I do have some content and slide content and demos which I want to go through as well. Thank you, Jax, on that. There was good discussion on the iron window as well. And let's see how many Skype crashes I will have on the later part of the call.
Just don't make a TCP joke. Skype will be okay.
Yes. Yeah. It might have been the TCP joke which actually caused Skype to crash. So who knows? Anyway, so the second thing what we wanted to talk about, that's super cool to have the flow functionality for SharePoint Online and all of that. But the one thing which was also cool because there's a lot of people still in on-premises and there's a lot of customers who are doing hybrid deployments, which is absolutely one of the key value propositions in the Microsoft platform. So you can choose to keep some of your stuff in on-prem, some of your stuff in cloud. And SharePoint 2019 preview started on 24th of July. So we released a blog post in Tech Community related on SharePoint 2019. That blog post and the content which was actually released didn't that much concentrate on what's available from the developer platform. And now that I came back from vacation, I've been trying to address those gaps from a messaging perspective, because absolutely we need to address the developer platform documentation side of the story as well, because there's a lot of people still doing even farm solutions and which are absolutely 100% supported in the future as well. So for rest part of the call, we're going to concentrate on the 2019 developer platform. I'm going to do a live demo on this as well. But few slides. So how do we actually get started on SharePoint 2019 preview? So first of all, if you're interested in testing this, you need to download the 2019 preview. I created an AKMS link for that one earlier today. So AKMS SP Dev Preview, that will point to the blog post where this announcement was actually done. So the 2019 announcement that it's available. In the blog post, you'll find links to the DVD or ISO files, and also on the guidance files, which among the other things, they actually contain the license to install the 2019 preview, because the installer is asking the license ID when you're running through that. So you need to actually access those files. The easiest way to actually get started with this one is really to use Azure or whatever is your virtual machine platform, whatever is your preference. Obviously, I use Azure because I can really easily spin up my environments there. Now, I'm going to show you what I did, but technically, quickly explaining what I did is that back in like a while ago, I created my SharePoint 2013 environment in Azure, and I used out-of-the-box templates which are available in Microsoft Azure, which actually creates a separate AD machine, a separate SQL machine, and a separate SharePoint 2013 server. So now what I did for 2019 is that I just added a new 2019 server and associated that to the same Azure AD and the same SQL server. So now I'm actually then in the same environment, and I didn't need to spin up the whole setup again. Andy is asking link to SharePoint 2019, AKMS SP 2019 preview underneath the first bullet point. That's where you can find the links directly there. Yes. Enable, so whenever you have then run the install or enabled or installed SharePoint 2019, run the prereq, run the installers, run the setup and config thing. Not going to deep dive on what's actually happening there, but you need to enable the adding model. So SharePoint Framework, if you're planning to use the SharePoint Framework in SharePoint 2019, you need to enable add-ins in the environment. And that means that you need to make sure that you have app service application enabled and the subscription settings service application. If you are setting this by using the out-of-the-box helper wizard and not using PowerShells, you need to actually still manually create the subscription setting service, because that's not created by default by the automation wizard, which is a pity. I don't know why and why somebody made the decision, but it is what it is. And then you need to actually add an app domain to the farm, even though you would be using just SharePoint Framework and not using apps. And SharePoint Framework doesn't actually use app domains. And the reason why you need to do this is that SharePoint Framework actually piggybacks on the add-in infrastructure when you're deploying stuff. And in the add-in infrastructure, it doesn't really understand that, hey, oh, you're actually using SPPK2 file, not an app file. So there's no exceptions on that. And that's why the add-in model has to be enabled, at least for now. Now, then you want to install obviously Node.js and npm and call the basic setups for SharePoint Framework development. And you want to install SharePoint Framework 1.4 or 1.4.1. There might be some changes on this one. We're still debating on the official final document guidance on this one, but we're still in preview how it's going to, and in the preview timeframe, at least for me, the 1.4.1 actually works perfectly well. Now, and when you're actually creating a SharePoint Framework solution, you need to choose SharePoint Online only as the baseline option. And that might seem slightly confusing, but that's because in the SharePoint Framework, when you're creating a solution, there's two options. Are you targeting SharePoint 2016 or are you targeting SharePoint Online? And we don't have yet an option for SharePoint 2019. So that's going to be part of the SharePoint Framework 1.6, which is scheduled to be out later this month. I'm going to explain that in practice in a live demo as well. But after this one, we basically then have a SharePoint Framework running in your farm, and you can actually do extensions, you can do other stuff as well. Now, if you are a SharePoint developer, you're probably quite interested in what is actually supported in SharePoint 2019. And this is now the status for preview. There might be some exceptions for this for RTM, but they will be really, really small. So this is pretty much the status for Go Live as well. So there will be obviously modern pages, modern lists, big thing, modern pages, modern experiences, modern sites. So modern team site without association to the group and communication site is included. Modern sub-site will be there in GA. Right now in the preview version of SharePoint 2019, the modern sub-site is not actually exposed in the UI. We are debating on giving you the workaround on that one. You can actually, because it works in the preview as well, but we'll give you the workaround in our documentation most likely later. SharePoint Framework extensions and web parts absolutely supported. Webhooks are supported as well. Asset packaging is supported, and that means that if you create a SharePoint Framework solution, you can just include JavaScript files and images inside of the SPPK2 file, and it will host that for you from the app catalog. So you don't have to worry about the CDN. Column formatting and list column formatting is there. Tenant scope deployment is available, so you're able to push web parts directly across your farm by adding them to the app catalog. Big thing as well, and ALM APIs is available as well. Now, what's not available, well, before we actually, on the yes part still, just do not avoid confuse anybody. Obviously, classic experience is still there, farm solutions is still there, sandbox solutions still there, feature framework still there. So all of the other stuff, classic stuff, absolutely there. Everything what you had in SharePoint 2016 pretty much is available in 2019 as well, just to avoid any confusion. Now, yes, question for Chris. Chris is asking, row formatting is out. That is correct, because row formatting is not yet even released in SharePoint Online. So absolutely. Sandbox solutions technically still work in SharePoint 2019, but probably you shouldn't be doing that. So that's all good. Now, is there a plan to allow modern subsites in a long term? SharePoint EU call yesterday implied it was no. I don't know what is a SharePoint EU call, but that's wrong actually. We are looking into allowing modern subsites in a long term for SharePoint Online and for on-premises as well. So sure, we recommend people to have potentially individual sites in individual site collection that is more performant design and using hub sites in SharePoint Online. Now, in on-premises, hub sites are not supported. So they didn't actually make, they were released in SharePoint Online slightly too late for getting them included in SharePoint 2019. And that's why hub sites are not available in 2019 and will not be there in GA. Site designs, unfortunately, not there. Tenant properties are not there. Modern themes are not there. This is actually even slightly painful, to be honest, because the out-of-the-box modern themes for modern sites and communication sites is there, but the capability for you to introduce a modern theme as an option is unfortunately not available. You can, however, use the classic, what is it, look and feel, or look, what is it, the classic theme capability, whatever it's called. I can't remember. Site collection app catalog might be actually there. It's pretty close. Thank you, composite looks mentioned in the window. And the site collection app catalog right now, it doesn't work. In preview, it might be there in GA. We're looking into potentially making that happen as a hotfix. In general, SharePoint Framework third-party version will be 1.4 or 1.41. This is still slightly debatable. There is a pretty big difference, however, between 1.4 and 1.41. because there's a difference between the node supported node versions and NPM versions. So we're trying to push it to the 1.41, but we haven't yet really locked the whole thing. Good. And are we looking at a few years without hub sites? For on-premises, unfortunately, that seems to be now the status. We can't promise when there will be additional capabilities for on-premises. Potentially they might at some point, potentially they might not. So don't quote me on saying that some of these capabilities will be released later. The hub sites went GA in SharePoint Online too late, comparing to the timelines of getting stuff included in SharePoint 2019. Because we need to remember that SharePoint 2019 is based on SharePoint Online. The latest version is already in SharePoint Online. The SharePoint 2019 is a fork from earlier this year from SharePoint Online, and then we clean up the cloud-dependent capabilities away. Cool. Cross-site buffering supported. Don't use that. I think it's actually supported still. I don't think we removed cross-site buffering. I personally always recommended people away from cross-site buffering due to numerous reasons, but let's not actually concentrate on that. Now, next steps for SharePoint 2019 development. So some things before I do the live demo as well. So the CSAM NUGET, so client-side object model NUGET for SharePoint 2019. I was planning to get it out before this call. Unfortunately, there was a unexpected certification thingy, which I still need to figure out with NUGET people. ETA right now is tomorrow, so you can actually then start doing development against SharePoint 2019. What's actually kind of interesting, technically, SharePoint 2016 CSAM NUGET does work with SharePoint 2019, but that's then missing some of the capabilities which are available in 2019. I'm not going to deep dive on the versioning differences here. I might actually do that later in some of these calls and why that is, but let's not actually concentrate on that one in this one. Now, SharePoint 2019 native support in SharePoint Framework 1.6. So in SharePoint Framework 1.6, which is ETA by end of August, there will be an option where you can actually target the code to be targeted on SharePoint 2019 onwards, including SharePoint Online. So basically, you will have then 3 different options when you run the Yeoman template, and one of them will be then for 2019. API documentation updates, ETA in September. So API, CSAM API, server-side API updates. We unfortunately somehow magically didn't do this for SharePoint 2016. I do not understand why. So now we're fixing that for 2019. So we're absolutely generating different documentation for that. And other documentation will be then gradually introduced as well. So obviously highly dependent on what kind of feedback you as a community are giving us, because we have quite significant resourcing challenges on the documentation side as well. So we need to understand what is the highest demand on the documentation requirements. Now, key guidance on SharePoint 2013 or SharePoint 2016 is 100% still valid. So feature framework, the classic farm solution development, all of the different, those kind of things absolutely work in SharePoint 2019 as well. So we're not going to actually have a, let's say, copy of that content. We rather complement that content with the SharePoint 2019 relevant stuff. Cool. A lot of talking in a short time frame because I wanted to make sure that we have a time for a quick demo as well. So let me actually share my screen and let's see that we get stuff recorded and moving. It is that screen. And And loading 3 dots. I can see that somebody should be seeing my screen. Somebody needs to confirm. 1, 2, 3. Yes, excellent, cool. So let's have a look on things. So first of all, how to get started on the preview is that if you write AKMS, I'm going to actually zoom in here, AKMS SP 2019 preview, that's going to actually land you on announcing availability on SharePoint Server 2019 preview page from Bill Bear, which concentrates on the end user capabilities. And if you scroll down here, you can actually find the relevant download links, and also what you need to have a look on is this reviewer guide and quick start guide, because this contains the licensing information or the license information for 2019. There was a question around guidance on upgrading from 2016 to 2019. To be honest, I haven't checked on that at all, so I can't confirm or deny do we have guidance on that or not. So simply haven't had a time to check that. But this basically gives you the preview version, and you're able to then install that. So in my case, what I've done, like explained, I actually have a 2013 environment with an Azure AD SQL Server provisioned at some point, and then what I did was that I just added my 2019 preview machine right next to that setup. So this way, I'm just expanding my on-premises environments on that setup, well, in this particular subscription. So I do have quite a few subscriptions, but this is my MSDN subscription. But technically, that's how I added my 2019 pretty easily available in Azure for my VM environments. Obviously, every one of you probably have your own way of doing this, and that's absolutely fine. We'll anyway add guidance and an article which is explaining how to get started sooner or later in our developer documentation as well. Now let's see. Here's my actually SharePoint 2019 environment. So few things here. So what did I actually wanted to pinpoint? So a few things from a service application side. So we get this one covered. So in here, if you run the configuration wizard, so if when you run the SharePoint 2019 installation, it actually asks you the configuration wizard to run as one of the options when you start up. Now, some of you might say, and all of the advanced people are saying that, well, you should never ever use the wizard. But if you're using this for development usage, well, the wizard is doing pretty decent job, so you don't actually have to wait or run the PowerShells and all of that to configure everything. It configures your environment pretty nicely. And it actually creates also the app management service, so app management service application, but it does not create subscription service application. So that's something what you need to manually create using PowerShell, and this is something what we will absolutely include in our documentation, but you need to create this to your tenant as well to be able to use SharePoint Framework in your SharePoint 2019 environment. The second thing what you need to do in the form is create the app catalog, and also configure the app URLs. Even though SharePoint Framework doesn't use the app domain, but these are pre-requirements in the process, and potentially we'll look into skipping this by the GA, so we'll see if we can actually get it fixed. But you need to do this for preview at least. After that's actually done, you are then you're basically ready for SharePoint Framework development. In general, in SharePoint 2019, it is almost like SharePoint Online, well, in certain ways. So it looks like a SharePoint. Here's the SharePoint Home. If I go to the if I go to the app launcher, we can actually see that there's a newsfeed still. There's a OneDrive link. There's a SharePoint, so it looks like a SharePoint Online environment. Now, in here, I can absolutely then create sites. I can create modern team sites. I can create modern communication sites, depending again on your self-service site collection creation or self-service site collection creation settings. In this case, let's actually create one site here, SIG called demo. And this is actually let's create a modern team site. Community call demo. And creating of these sites is obviously super fast because these are modern sites. So 1, 2, 3, there's my site, voila, and that's pretty cool how fast it is comparing to the SharePoint 2016 classic site collection creation, which always takes quite a long time. Now, if I want to now do development and SharePoint Framework development in here, there's certain things which we need to remember. Now, first of all, let me actually create here this to, oh, do I have anything here? No, I don't have anything here. So let me actually run the SharePoint, not SharePoint, I can write Microsoft SharePoint. SharePoint. So this one will start the SharePoint Framework generator, and there is I just can't do this properly. So let me actually do this. Yo, this is always good. Yes, I'm always doing that mistake. Thank you, David. But you can always start yo if needed, because if you're lazy, you can just select the Microsoft SharePoint from here, and then that's going to actually start this thing. Now, in my case, I've installed SharePoint Framework 1.4.1 to this environment. I'll show that one in a second, which means that when I actually create the solution, I want to target SharePoint Online, even though that's slightly confusing. But the SharePoint 2016 onwards is for SharePoint 2016. That will actually create you SharePoint Framework 1.1 version of the environment. This one, because I've actually installed 1.4.1, will create me 1.4.1 solution. So that's actually the right one. For now, whenever we get the SharePoint Framework 1.6 out, you will have a third version and third option in here, which will be then in SharePoint 2019 onwards, including SharePoint Online. So in my case, I'm going to actually quickly break this. Let's see if I can actually find the right keys from my keyboard. I'm still learning this keyboard. No, come on, there we go. So in my case, I do have a SharePoint Framework installed, but it's 1.4.1. And how did I get that installed? It's actually getting installed. So if you do installation, and all of this is absolutely getting documented. So if I do npm install Microsoft SharePoint generator, and I add explicitly the right version in the end of this command, that will then install the 1.4.1 version for me. So that's how you actually target the specific version to be installed on this machine. Cool. In my case, I've actually created a call extension just to show this one in practice, and I do apologize, we'll go slightly long today because I want to get this one documented as a video. So if I go call extension, there's my solution, which I can actually see over there as well. Let's actually do call up bundle ship. So I'm going to actually make that solution ready to get contributed. And then do a call up bundle package solution. So I'm not going to do debugging or anything. I'm going to just show that it's working properly. There we go, package solution ship. And there we go, and then Explorer, and let's open that one. So I'm actually able to see that I've just created a new version of the solution, and it is actually application customizer. And what that means that we can actually now install this application customizer to our app catalog. And there's certain things in preview which you might not actually, well, you need to be aware or don't get, let's say, fooled. So when I'm installing this solution, it is using asset packaging. The asset packaging means that my JavaScript files and my images are automatically hosted by the farm. So you don't actually need to host these JavaScript files anywhere, which is pretty cool. So it's inside of the solution package, almost like a sandbox solution, but not quite. Now, what it means then is that when I'm installing this, it's actually saying, so it's actually saying that the client-side solution will get content from following domains, and it's saying SharePoint Online, which is highly confusing, and that's a mistake because we just haven't actually considered the on-premises in this dialog. So it should say SharePoint Farm. So it's not actually copying anything on a SharePoint Online. You don't have to have a SharePoint Online. Everything is from the on-premises environment. Now clicking that is going to then install the solution, and that's now available. And now if I go back to that site which we just created, community call demo, site content, and I've installed or I have all of the capabilities available, I'm adding an app, I can actually see my SIG call demo client-side solution available. That's now getting installed on the page, and in any second we can actually then see the extensions available and getting loaded on the site. So let's see, 123 is still installing. There's a timer job running behind of the scenes in the server, and whenever the timer job has executed properly, we are able to see that the extension has been installed properly to the site. Now, what's also cool, just to pinpoint, is that this one, we do support tenant scope deployment, so you're able to use that one to push web parts. By the way, Pavel's comment, app deployment has been taking some time lately. This is my on-premises farm, so whatever has taken time for you doesn't mean that it's taking time for me in my on-premises farm, so that's a different setting. Now, there we go. There's my extension. Extension is getting rendered. It's a super cool header component, no, seriously, and a super cool and awesome footer. Oh my god. But you can actually see that my extensions are getting rendered properly in the on-premises farm. It's SharePoint 2019, and things are working. But the tenant scope deployment, like mentioned, supported. You're able to push web parts available to all of the sites. You're able to use that actually also together with the extensions, but then you need to enable the extension in a site-by-site level. One point still on the demo side of the story, if I go to the SharePoint and really pinpoint this one, it is a pity that we don't have a site designs available, which means that you can't actually modify the selection and you can't actually modify what's happening with the communication sites or the team site creation. And that is a nasty limitation. Technically, if you need to run code whenever the communication site is created, that means that, well, I shouldn't probably say this out loud, but there's always an option of implementing a farm solution and using feature stapling. So not necessarily the optimal solution, but then again, it's on premises. Farm solutions absolutely supported. If you want, you can still use classic experiences. You don't have to use the modern. You can gradually introduce the modern. So there's multiple different options for you to take advantage. So we do not force only modern in SharePoint 2019. But yes, Erwin, I said it, stapling. Erwin told me yesterday that you can't say that. But it is, if you have a business scenario that you need to enable running code whenever a modern communication site is getting created, probably feature stapling is the only way to do that. Now, let me actually go back on the slides and we can close up the call. I probably missed some of the questions and the PMP package. Yeah, I was, there's few other things in the 2019 preview where the community could able to help, but it's one of those things that do we actually want to do that, and do we actually want to do that in practice, or drive the farm solution scenarios still for on-prem. Let's see if I can actually get the slides available on the PMP. Yes. Oh, there's a nice word as well, SharePoint variation. So loading of the slides, there we go. We went a few minutes long. I do apologize on that. We had too much discussions with Jax, but that's fine. Let me actually close that one. Next time, we don't have, if there's any urgent Q&A questions which I missed, you can still put them in the iron window. I can answer in the iron window also after we close the call. But next DevSig meeting is on August 23rd. The next SharePoint Framework meeting is on next Tuesday, and we do have the monthly community call coming on next. The SharePoint Framework special interest group call on Thursday, the monthly community call on Tuesday. So there's quite a few calls. You can absolutely also join or watch the calls or the demos using the recorded YouTube videos as well. So that's absolutely an option as well. But for now, I think it's time to move on. So thank you for those who joined. Hopefully that was interesting, and hopefully that was beneficial for your work as well. The call has been recorded. The video will be available in the SharePoint Dev YouTube channel within 24 hours. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for your feedback. Please let us know what kind of documentation you need for SharePoint 2019 and whatever is missing. If you find any bugs, please let us know. And I'm trying to report my Skype bugs. That wasn't too horrible today, but all good. Thank you, everybody. We'll be absolutely in touch. Bye-bye.